Who are you?
A ghost from your past, here to put an end to this sideshow.
You picked the wrong person to haunt.
Welcome back, guys. This is F3 here. So as you can see from my yesterday's post, I had an early viewing of The Karate Kid Legends, and in this video I will do a breakdown to share my thoughts on the movie, theories that were confirmed, discuss how it fits into the lore, and power scaling Lee Fong as the new Karate Kid. Please note this may contain some spoilers, but I'll try to keep it as spoiler free as possible. So with that being said, let's get right into the breakdown of this movie. Now, the Karate Kid Legends largely follows the same formula as we see in the previous Karate Kids. The new main character is the new kid in his town. They meet a bully, they fight them and they lose. They meet a mentor, they teach them what they know, and their final obstacle that they need to overcome is beating their bully at the tournament. Now, Karate Kid Legends have some minor differences that sets it apart from the other movies, but it's largely the same structures, and you can tell from this movie they kept it super safe. Like, they didn't do anything different with it. Not much anyways. Now, they had a lot of concepts in the movie that were great if they had enough time to actually develop it properly, but it was severely underdeveloped and not enough time for it to feel earned. So I think in terms of like plot development, the movie doesn't really do a good job here. It didn't explore important characters such as Lee's brother Bo Fong and Connor Day, as the audience couldn't really connect nor resonate with characters. From what we know of Lee's brother Bo Fong, is that we already know that they both trained in the same kung fu style as Mr. Han, and Lee's brother is an adept kung fu practitioner whose death has a huge effect on Lee. And we also didn't really get to see much of Connor Day, other than like he's the typical jerk-ass that Lee has to defeat to overcome, but we don't get to see any more development from him other than that. The romance between Lee and Mia also felt very rushed and forced. The interaction seemed very friendly, but not very romantic. Contrast this with Daniel and Ali, Dre and Mi Yang, and Miguel and Sam. There was a lot of build up to it, but between Lee and Mia, a lot of it felt very rushed. If they wanted to keep all of these ideas to set Lee apart, then they should have made it into a TV series to properly space it out. So they gave no compelling reason why they needed Daniel's Miyagi-Do to help Lee win the 5 boroughs, especially when Lee's already adept at Mr. Hong's kung fu style. They had no reason to bring Daniel's character in other than, hey look, we're in the same universe now. He didn't really have much involvement in the script, nor was there any early scenes of Daniel to at least hint that Daniel will be leaving for New York. Despite this, some scenes I do find refreshing in the movie is having Lee being Victor's Shifu, using Victor's pizzeria to train him in his kung fu, which helped Victor in his boxing match. And one thing I liked about it is that Lee didn't train Victor in the usual jacket on, jacket off style that Mr. Han did, but instead he came up with his own methods to train Victor to help him with his boxing match. Victor was great in his ability that their opponent had to cheat in order to knock Victor out. The fight choreography was also really great as well, and that each fight we see in the movie, it made Lee really shine. Even in his first fight against Connor, in which he lost, we also get to see action scenes from both Daniel and Mr. Han working together to defend Lee from a cheap shot attempt. They also had a great angle where it would make a prodigy largely struggle because of his trauma rather than just dealing with the jerk-ass like Connor, but they make it about Lee's struggle to make his kung fu work against Connor, which again I kind of believe comes down to a lack of possible tournament experience. For the overall movie, it's really underdeveloped here. It's like I can't really say it exceeds expectations of the Karate Kid movie. Like, it really underdeveloped here. I would say it is okay. Like, it's not a bad movie, but it definitely had a lot of lackluster qualities. For the casual viewer who isn't deeply enamored with the Miyagi-verse, this would be a fun watch. For those who are expecting a spectacular Karate Kid film, this would definitely be a disaster. Now, if you're somebody like me that is deeply enamored in the Miyagi-verse and the lore, I would still recommend you to watch it, as whether you like it or not, this movie is now a part of the same universe and would be used for knowing in case of more future works that might get added to the series. Now, let's go into discussing the lore. The cameo appearance is an important guest, which I won't spoil, further emphasizes that the two Karate Kid universes are now in one. So Lee Fong is effectively in the same universe as Dre, Miguel, and the other Cobra Kai cast. The beginning of the movie revised one of Mr. Miyagi's lines from the Karate Kid 2, where Mr. Miyagi references Shippo Sensei's connection to the Han family. That means the Hans are now an important part of the Miyagi history. So let's move on to some of the theories I got right and I got wrong. So the first movie I got part right. I was right in that Bo Fong did die, but it was over a karate tournament by the hands of people Bo and Lee likely didn't even know, which made the circumstances behind Bo's death underwhelming in my opinion, and it makes you ask why kill people over a tournament. Though it clearly wasn't enough for the Fong family to move to New York, as they were still in China after that happened, so that part of the theory I got wrong. Now the next theory I had in my previous video is the reason why Mr. Han went to California to seek Daniel's help, and it turns out it was just from his own incentives. In my previous video, I have stated that Lee's mom's worry is what drove Mr. Han to seek out Daniel, but there was no dialogue building up to that point, and Mr. Han's just like, okay, yeah, I'm just gonna go meet a friend. Now, in addition to that, like, the one point I was right is that they did give Daniel and Sensei Shifu rivalry with Mr. Han. Where I was wrong on this is that I assumed that something must have happened between Daniel and Johnny to the point their partnership broke off, because that would be the first time it happened. However, nothing was touched on that, and instead they just focused on building rivalry between Daniel and Mr. Han, though this rivalry was a lot tamer compared to Daniel's rivalry with Johnny. Now Mr. Han did know Mr. Miyagi, but it was after the events of Karate Kid 3 where Mr. Miyagi spoke highly of Daniel. My original theory was Mr. Han and Mr. Miyagi went back before Mr. Miyagi even met Daniel, but I was wrong in that it was after him. It was also explained that Shimpo Sensei was taught the Han style of Kung Fu and formed Miyagi-Do with that knowledge, which explains why Dre Parker from the 2010 movie never learned the Miyagi-Do style and instead trained in the jacket on, jacket off style. From what we can hear from Mr. Han's time with Mr. Miyagi, it seems like they just spent like a few nights together, which wasn't really significant enough for Mr. Han to train in the Miyagi-Do style. Now this theory I was actually wrong about, and that's Lee and Mia do become a couple, though considering how rushed their romance was, they were better off as friends. Now we get into the character analysis. We'll start with Lee Fong. In the intro, right off the bat, we see Lee Fong share many traits with the previous Karate Kids. He's sociable, charming, and likable like both Daniel LaRusso and Dre Parker. He has a rebel side to him similar to Julie Pierce. And speaking of Julie Pierce, the new training grounds where Han and Daniel train him is at a pigeon coop, which is called back to their next Karate Kid, where Julie regularly visits Angel the Hawk. Lee also struggled with academics, but we don't see this in Daniel or Dre in their respective films. He also shares some distinct similarities to Cobra Kai's Miguel Diaz. Daniel, Julie, and Dre always refers to their mentors by name, but Miguel and Lee, they never failed to address their mentors as strictly Sensei and Shifu. They were both excellent and cooperative students of their mentors, whereas Daniel, Julie, and Dre needed more unorthodox methods for their training. Skill-wise, Lee is one of the more unique cases alongside Miguel. Unlike Dre and Daniel, who couldn't defend themselves or hit Chang and Johnny, Connor couldn't take Lee out without some effort, as despite being out of training for a short period of time, Lee did make Connor move a bit and put him in the defensive state, which was drastically different from Daniel and Dre's case where they were straight up losing. It's also very different from Miguel in that Lee endured Connor's attacks before ultimately losing, while Miguel wiped the floor with Kyler and his goons despite him being trained in wrestling and did so with ease. It could also be inferred that unlike Daniel and Dre, who didn't have any fighting experience at all, Lee could have actually beaten Connor in their first bout, or at least stood a chance if Lee still wasn't deeply affected by the loss of his brother. But it's also possible that Connor was just a better fighter than Lee, and that Lee's Kung Fu wouldn't work on him, which is why they needed Miyagi-Do. Though to be fair, it's possible Lee was more affected by his trauma more than his Kung Fu alone not working against Connor. There's not much comparison I can make with Lee and Julie other than this. Julie had her one on-screen fight and went against Ned, who was physically stronger and bigger than she was, whereas Lee took out multiple adults who were bigger than him to save Victor's life. Though to be fair, those adults were untrained enforcers, but keep in mind Lee is still a teenager when this happened. Unlike the previous Karate Kids where their main struggle is being an underdog needing to overcome their bully, Lee's conflict, I believe, was less about overcoming the bully and more about dealing with his fear and trauma, which I believe are main obstacles that Lee has to overcome if he hopes to defeat Connor. The movie didn't explore this well, and it made Connor out to be the obvious villain he has to overcome without any development on Connor's part whatsoever. In terms of the Miyagi lore, Lee is one on his way to becoming an unstoppable fighting machine, but he has a long way to go. Taking a good look at Lee's skill, Lee definitely has more tools at his arsenal, which would give him a leg up, but I think he's still at the lower end. If we look at the previous Karate Kids before him, such as Daniel, Dre, and Miguel, they had to fight the entire tournament without getting any days in between rest. Unlike at the 5 boroughs, where Lee gets to rest and train more for his upcoming rounds each time he wins, this means Lee has a shot of winning against Julie, though it'll be a different case with Daniel, Dre, and Miguel, as they will likely have more endurance to continue fighting in the ring, unlike Lee. If we look at plot-wise, Lee could have a chance at winning against Daniel and Dre, since they had very little training when they entered their own tournaments and lacked street fighting experience, unlike Lee, as well as Julie, who only had her one proper fight in the movie. But he'll struggle against Miguel since he had over a year of training and managed to translate that into street fighting successfully against a wrestler like Kyler before stepping into the All-Valley ring and becoming its new champion. Though to be fair, we actually don't know Lee's tournament participation in China, since all we know is that Lee is a prodigy, so chances are Lee actually did have some tournament experience, which would change my analysis a bit, but not by much. In my previous video, I've stated earlier that Lee might actually have a chance at fighting the OG Cobra Kai characters from season 1, but I think I retract that statement upon seeing how the 5 boroughs actually operates the tournaments. Considering the 5 boroughs and the All Valleys are both citywide tournaments, the context would add into Cobra Kai Gen Z's favor against Lee. The only Cobra Kai characters he could realistically give a run for their money are Robbie Keane and Sam LaRusso, but this is due to them primarily being trained in Miyagi-Do, a style in which Lee is also trained in, and even then, Robbie's and Sam's endurance was put to the test in the All Valley tournament, whereas Lee's wasn't at the 5 boroughs. Overall, Lee's skill can see unprecedented growth where given enough time and experience and refinement, he could surpass the likes of Miguel as the current Sakai Takai champion, as well as the rest of the Cobra Kai cast. Now we move on to one of the Karate Kid legends himself, Mr. Han. And I wanted to discuss it because there was a lot of things about Mr. Han we need to talk about. So from the 2010 Karate Kid movie, though in retrospect it should be named Kung Fu Kid considering the setting, there's a drastic shift from Mr. Han's character in the 2010 version till now. In 2010, Mr. Han looks like a rugged, down-on-his-luck maintenance man. Every time we see Mr. Han, he looks very messy and unkempt. You wouldn't even recognize Jackie Chan immediately until you could hear him speak. In Legends, he's a completely changed man and managed to change his life around. He went from being a maintenance man to running the biggest wuguans in Beijing, where he teaches his students the jacket on, jacket off style. When we first see him, he appears as the classic Jackie Chan we would see in his old action movies, but older and wiser. He's also more goofier and jovial than his old 2010 part, something akin to what we see in Rush Hour. It seems like something must have happened to Mr. Han after becoming a mentor for Dre. Like, even if Mr. Han decided to become a Shifu after seeing the impact he had on Dre, much like Johnny finding fulfillment in becoming a karate sensei for Miguel. It wasn't clear if Mr. Han was against tournaments back in 2010, however, in Legends, we can see Mr. Han in a flashback during the night Lee's brother wins his tournament in Beijing, so it can be inferred that Lee potentially competed in tournaments there. Even though it's been a year since his brother died, it is likely possible Lee didn't participate in any tournaments there, which would explain his lack of experience in translating fights into the real world. That is it for my video, guys. So in light of the Cobra Kai series ending, you won't be seeing content of Cobra Kai anymore because the series has ended. It's now time for us to move on. Because I'm still a Cobra Kai fan, I will continue talking about the things that are related to the Miyagi-verse, such as the Karate Kid Legends and a potential Cobra Kai movie if the Karate Kid Legends is successful, as referencing Ralph Macchio's words. However, we have to consider that there's also going to be an eventual end for those two. And if you want to see more Cobra Kai content or Cobra Kai related content, here are some recommendations from my channel that I would suggest you guys to watch. So if Cobra Kai has taught us anything, it's that the right mentor can set us on the right path. But can we imagine a world without a mentor? This world is explored in the game called Sifu. Sifu makes up the second biggest content you'll find on my channel alongside Cobra Kai. It's a character action game developed by Slowclap where you play as a Pakme student who lost their father and mentor as a child. and spend their entire life seeking revenge against those that took them away. And following that, I have also made Sifu videos on how you can play your favorite Cobra Kai characters in the game, utilizing techniques and combos that best resembles the Cobra Kai character's personality. And if you like those kinds of videos, then I'd encourage you to check out my actual Sifu gameplay videos. And in follow up to that, I'd encourage you to check out my videos on the smoothest combos to see how you can chain different combos in Sifu and create a customized combat experience. And with that being said, I've also encouraged you to check out a video that I have edited called Puck Make It, and it's basically created using the game Sifu, but the structure captures the spirit of the Karate Kid, where you learn to use new technique and use it at a critical moment. You can also find content on my channel about Cobra Kai's Dojo's Rising and the Karate Kid saga continues, as well as the Karate Kid Street Rumble, which retells the story of the Karate Kid from series 1 to 3. I also do videos on how certain characters from other series would fight using Cobra Kai vs Miyagi-Do. This is one of the reasons why I absolutely love character action games such as Assassin's Creed, Devil May Cry, Bayonetta, Sleeping Dogs, because it offers enough flexible combat features that helps bring their personalities to life and offer players a novel combat experience, defining how the character wants to do combat. You can fight aggressively like Cobra Kai, you can fight defensively like Miyagi-Do, and you can define your path that you want to take. And that's the type of games that I love a lot, which is why my channel name Free Flow Fire is reflected, because those will be the type of content you'll see on my channel. There are CAG games that are coming out that I would love to play and put them on my YouTube channel, and those are Acts of Blood by the EXO team, Spine, Ninja Gaiden 4, etc. So even though Cobra Kai is ending, we may not even get more Cobra Kai content, like at least those videos will be there, so that spirit that Cobra Kai has given us will still be alive in those videos.